First of all, I strongly believe that clarity before activity.
Oh, beautiful. I might just steal this one. Clarity before activity.
Yes, because institutions can be very busy. Through that busyness, there's no effectiveness.
Sure.
And it really speaks to this idea that, activity can sometimes create illusion, of progress, when in actual fact, you don't have clear priorities, and also you don't have also clarity of direction. And what I find is that organizations, they fragment their energy just by not being focused and clear on the direction. If frontline teams cannot explain the strategy in the simplest form, you must understand it hasn't been cascaded.
Sure.
That's almost like your litmus test. Are my frontline teams understanding the strategy? And has it been properly translated? So translation, I think, is the toughest part in any strategy cycle. And you've got to understand that executive level, strategy is mostly directional. But once you get to operational level, it has to be about your behavioral expectations.
Sure.
What are those?
Hello, I am Dr. Mandaj Flaro, and on this week's episode of the SuperLead Podcast series, we are joined by Africa's leading voices in strategy, finance, and sustainable transformation, Punki Modise. She's the Group Chief Strategy and Sustainability Officer at Absa, recognized globally as one of the top 250 women in sustainability for 2025. And in this conversation, we unpack her leadership journey. We learned lessons on how she leads. And lastly, we unpacked a topic very close to my heart, which is how do we get strategy from a piece of paper to be a lived reality by everyone in the organization and to be felt by customers and by shareholders and all stakeholders involved. Punky, welcome to SuperLead Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. We've been chatting and been looking forward to this conversation. So today we're going to talk about, how do you get strategy from a piece of paper to being a lived reality and felt by customers and all stakeholders. But before we do that, we want to just kind of learn from you and hear your story. And if you can walk us from as early as possible to where we are today. And I want to almost just read this. So today you're Chief Strategy and Sustainable Officer at Absa. Just last year alone, 2025, awarded Top 250 Women in Sustainability, Business Leader of the Year 2025, Financial Women Trailblazer of the Year 2025, Sustainability Champion 2025, and I think I can go on. Let's start from the beginning. Who is Punky? Where did we grow up, etc.?
Thanks. That's a fascinating question to begin with. So I grew up in Middlelands, in Soweto, to be exact. I went to school there, but I think my career trajectory, I would say, it started when I went to high school. Okay, because then it was at the formation of the college, Pace Commercial College.
Right.
And as you can hear, it says commercial.
Oh, I see. I see.
I started at Pace Commercial College, and then I went on to St. Andrews, and then after St. Andrews, then I went to Wits.
Right.
So that's where my real commercial experience started at Wits University. But subsequent to Wits University, then I completed my degree, which enabled me to write the board exams. But I did that part-time, through the University of Natal.
Right.
And then subsequent to that, then I did my board exams. qualified as a chartered accountant.
So before qualifying,
Yeah.
parent structure,
Yeah.
how is it like in
Yeah.
Midlands?
Yeah. So, I mean, from a structure point of view, I would say I was raised mostly by my mother and grandmother.
Right.
So my grandmother used to twist my ears because I wasn't listening. And I remember one time, I mean, we used to, like as kids, cook in the street. So,
Right.
you know, everyone needs to like bring a bit, like you bring tomatoes and you bring onions. So one time I actually stole onions from home. And I was leaving my grandmother's place to go and contribute to cooking there in the street. Then my grandmother saw these onions because they fell from me, you know. So that was the kind of, I think, of environment that one grew up in. But it was exciting because you learned a lot of leadership lessons from there. But I think schooling-wise, I would say one of the people that has contributed significantly was my sister, who's the one that was actually paying for my high school fees. So that really changed, I think, my trajectory. But also through that, then a teacher came. And she also, you know, realized the potential that I had. And then she supported me through that. And then that's what ultimately led to where I'm at today. So in essence, I think what I'm trying to say is that there's a saying that says it takes a village to raise a child. And I'm actually one of the beneficiaries of that.
Lovely.
Yeah.
It truly is the case here.
Yeah.
And so you qualify as a CA.
Yes, qualified as a CA. Very difficult, I must say, the board exams. But subsequent to that, then I went and I did my articles with Pricewaterhouse, so now known as PwC. And then during that time, I mean, I was working, but also, you know, studying part-time. That's when I did my master's degree in financial management as well. So subsequent to my career at PwC. Maybe let me tell you this story.
Yes.
Actually, it's a fascinating story. So when I started at Wits, I was having a conversation with my grandmother because I was doing a BCom.
Okay.
And she wanted to understand what exactly is a BCom all about, you know, because if you remember those days, a lot of the conversations were mostly, you know, around you have to become a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer.
Yes.
So now I'm like coming with this old, you know, qualification. And then, my grandmother then was like, explain to me what exactly, you know, does it all mean? So I said, no, what it actually entails is that one day I'll become a bank manager and then I'll have all the money in the bank. And she said, no, go for it, Meg. So, but, and the reason why I'm mentioning this is that when I started at Standard Bank and I got it, because that was my first real job post articles, it was actually such a profound moment.
Oh, wow.
I think there was just something in me that just said, actually, sometimes you have to be careful what you wish for because
it might actually show up.
Yes, it
Here
was
you
all
are,
showing up.
a bank manager, and you look after all this money.
So the rest was history. So now here I am. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right. So you've led, you know, you've had multiple executive roles. What I'm curious about is what is Punky's sort of leadership playbook? What are those guiding principles that you go to every time to say, you know, when I'm this is how I lead effectively?
I would say for me, there's about 4 core guiding principles, you know, that guide, you know, how I lead. First of all, I strongly believe that clarity before activity.
Oh, beautiful. I might just steal this one. Clarity before activity.
Yes, because institutions can be very busy. Through that busyness, there's no effectiveness.
Sure.
And it really speaks to this idea that, you know, activity can sometimes create illusion, you know, of progress, when in actual fact, you don't have clear priorities, and also you don't have also clarity of direction. And what I find is that organizations, they fragment their energy just by not being focused and clear on the direction. I would say then this
this is good. Yes.
the second
I need
aspect.
to rewrite that book. I just grab this piece and put it in my book. Yeah, continue.
No, thank you. Yeah, the second one is the issue of discipline. You have to protect your ambition at all costs. And it is through discipline that you protect it. One of the examples I normally give to people is that because I work in Absa in Alice Lane in Sandton, so if I have to drive, every morning I have to drive to Alice Lane. That is my ambition, for that morning. I need to get to that end state. So in so doing, I know it takes me an hour to get to Alice Lane. However, one day it's going to take me 3 hours because of traffic or whatever is happening. What do I do? Because I have to get to Alice Lane.
Yes, that's the end point.
Yes. So I look for different routes which will take me shorter than the 3 hours that anticipated for that day. So that is discipline, because I know I need to be there in an hour's time. Now, my time has been extended to 3 hours, but I still need to get there. Then I take an alternate route to get there. So in essence, it also talks to strategy, that, when you have strategy and you're clear on your direction, life happens.
Yes.
And when life happens, you take a different direction, but be disciplined enough to say that that's
where I'm gonna go. Because
Yeah.
then you can have that obstacle, and then you're like, maybe not today. I'm not going.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. So you must protect your ambition.
Yes. Yeah, I think the third aspect of it is around the fact that alignment beats charisma. So sustainable institutions are built on systems, not personalities. So if you really focus on ensuring that, the system is strengthened through multiple generations, you'll find that you ultimately get the right level of alignment, and performance outcomes also talk to that.
So good.
Yeah. And then the final aspect is around your renewal. Ultimately, I would say it sustains relevance.
Sure.
Expertise evolves before it expires. And you've got to have that always at the back of your mind, and then be able to understand at what point do you renew yourself as an individual, because life evolves. I mean, if you think about it, I don't know if you're old enough to remember that we had those brick cell phones.
Yes. Shami will not know, but I think I can still remember. Yes.
And then we've evolved now to much more intelligent phones that you can really interact with. I was reading the other day, and they were talking about how AI, for example, people are becoming a lot more dependent, and they actually share their problems, with AI. And mental health issues now get resolved via AI. So my sense is therefore that expertise has to evolve. And that supports, I think, that principle. So in my view then, Manda, those are the principles that at the end of the day, I lead through volatility and also without compromising at the same time the institutional integrity, because institutional integrity is what drives, I think, sustainability ultimately.
The question is, when is the book coming out? I think we pause here and then we'll let you go write the book because this needs to be published. So, as I said before, I'm curious these days about this question that many of us lead, and then at some point in the leader's life, they get to a place of overwhelm, whether it's just momentarily, where sometimes one feels like, there's a lot. How can I still do it? Or maybe it's an illness or something that happens that sort of hits them and shakes them a little bit. I wonder for you if those moments happen, maybe let's say when they happen, how do you handle those situations?
Yeah, I would say that it's important to think of your own life in the similar vein and context as we think about organizations. Okay, so firstly is, organizations have got strategy. Through the strategy, they have operating model, they have leadership models, they have culture, etc. You need to have the same for yourself.
Sure.
Okay, so have your own, say, I would say, a board, which are people that you know that I can implicitly trust.
Sure.
So when I go to you, for example, Manda, I know I will get this kind of support. When I go to my next friend, I get this kind of support. And also make sure that your sphere of influence provides you with the right of level of support that you require for the role,
Sure.
that you are in. And then in that way, it relieves the load
I see.
you as an individual, because you've got a well of knowledge that you can always go to for support. That is the first thing. Secondly, most of times underestimate the importance of a coach.
Oh, wow.
Someone that you can really sit with and problem solve.
But I fear very few people have got coaches. And maybe like senior people might have a coach that's provided for by the organization. How might maybe people that don't have that structure potentially navigate this coaching space?
One of the most underestimated elements of leadership is the role of coaching. So as the systems that we operate in become more and more complex, having a space where you can think, you can reflect, and also you can be challenged becomes critical. So for me, therefore, when I think about coaching, it does provide a structured way, to process that level of complexity, whether it's decision-making, managing pressure, or also just creating clarity for yourself. Because when you have someone else just checking and challenging you, you get to a space where you can have greater clarity from your side. So in my mind, therefore, it's also a space where you can be completely open without judgment on the back of that, which is important, particularly given the demands of the leadership roles that we occupy. And also, I would say that because leadership can also be very, very isolating at times, and it's something that I reflect upon most of the time. In my mind, therefore, having the space where you can think aloud and also be challenged in a constructive way, it becomes incredibly value-adding to an individual. So for those in my mind that may not have access to formal coaching programs, the principle still applies because you can find, someone that you can sit with and then they can coach you. You just explore with that person to find a stronger solution to the problem that you might be faced with at that particular point in time. So in my mind is you can therefore build on the back of that what I call a personal board for yourself, which is a small group of trusted individuals who bring different perspectives and who can also, engage with you honestly. And I think honestly should be underlined because that's one of the critical things that, you need to be considering. But also the most important thing is intentionality. You need to be clear about what you are solving for, in your own development, because without that clarity, even the best support structures will not be effective. So effectiveness really comes from you being clear as to what is the problem statement, and it takes a lot of self-awareness for you to get there. So if you've got self-awareness and you are comfortable to be vulnerable and also to take honest feedback from other people, then coaching will work, for you. Yeah.
Lovely. You were still going. I was just fascinated about the coaching and just this worry that there's people are going through these professional lives, and sometimes they need a coach, but I don't think they prioritize that.
Yeah. No. You definitely have to prioritize it, especially the more senior you become. It becomes almost like a bloodline.
Sure.
So yeah, for me, it's something that I would really encourage a lot of people out there
Yeah.
to think about it because it's helpful.
Excellent. Wow. So maybe we now pivot into our favorite topic, strategy.
Yeah.
So, so I am a lecturer, so we teach this stuff, and you actually get to do strategy in a large corporation such as Absa. What I'm curious about, you can start anywhere. How do we get these fancy documents that we consultants help package, from that to being a lived reality on the day-to-day? When I pick up the phone and call someone from Absa, somehow that strategy is translated into that call.
Yeah, strategy can be very abstract.
So we can start anywhere. We can value chain it, like from the analysis and kind of the planning, the implementation, the communication, etc.
Absolutely. I think for me, strategy begins, I would say, with disciplined choice.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so first it's about positioning. Okay, and positioning really talks to where we will compete, and also equally important, which is something that people don't do, is where we will not compete.
And that's why it's a disciplined choice.
Yes.
We have to make a deliberate choice about where not to compete.
Where not to compete. And because, that positioning also has to be grounded in customer understanding. Because if you don't have a good understanding of your customer, you cannot make those choices.
Sure.
So I think that's the first thing. So for me, therefore, strategy begins with the absolute clarity on the customer problem that we are trying to solve.
Excellent.
And I always ask my team, what problem are we solving?
Yeah, especially when people are busy in the activity. You go, hey, wait, what are we actually solving for here?
So once you're clear on the problem you are solving, then it moves to how consistently are you in terms of solving that problem. You have to be consistent. And then, because consistency on the back of that does build trust.
I see.
You see. And then it also then translates into sustainable revenue streams. And also on the back of that, you get long-term value creation for shareholders. And I must say, importantly, that in banking, it's very important to distinguish between capital and deposit. So the deposits, to a large extent, are client funds and sit on the liability side of the balance sheet, and they fund the lending activities of the bank, whereas regulatory capital, on the other hand, is provided by shareholders, and it serves, to a large extent, as a buffer. When the bank is under pressure, it's got the right level of resilience, but also stability on the back of that. The second thing, us being a bank, to a large extent, capital allocation.
Yes.
We are really thinking about, how we then deploy scarce shareholder resources in a way that then balances, at the end of the day, balances growth, risk, as well as long-term sustainability of a bank. And then I think the third aspect of it is risk appetite.
Sure.
And it's the calibration of that risk appetite. So your growth ambition has to be consistent, but it also needs to be balanced, I think, with the strength of your balance sheet.
Sure.
So you really need to think through, especially, if I look at some of our strategies, some of the decisions that we make today, as an example, are 10-year, 15-year decisions. So they've got a long running cycle. And also, if you look at, for example, a home loan in the context of banking, when we give a home loan, it's for 20 years.
Yes.
So you're allocating that capital for a period of 20 years, which means that it's going to be trapped And you've got to then find a way of how do you realize value from that capital, because the capital, you get it from shareholders.
Sure.
And shareholders are looking for returns at the back of that. So we therefore need to make sure that we effectively manage the risk that relates to the capital that we've received, so that we can continue to honor the obligations that we have to our shareholders. One of the principles that I also apply from my side when interrogating the strategy is really a principle around, validity today equals soundness tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
A strategy may appear to be valid in the current conditions and also generate short-term performance. But what's important is that when you look at it, always have to ask yourself the deeper question as to whether structurally is it sound across cycles.
Sure.
You see, and it comes back to the issue of the home loans. So if we make decisions around, we want to grow home loans, we must ask ourselves today the question as to, is it structurally sound, that decision? Because there's going to be capital that's trapped
for that long. Sure.
Yeah.
Lovely. love the principles. Now, some practicalities. So where do we start? So say someone is interested in being a strategist. What do you actually do? So sometimes you go away for 2-3 days. We call it a stretch session. Where do we start with the planning, and how does it work there at Absa?
Yeah. So I mean, it's mostly about engagement. Okay. And for engagement to happen, you have to create space. Okay. And it's not something that you do as a one-off. Okay. It has to be done over or iteratively, as opposed to just a one-off exercise. And then where you start by asking the question as to what is the problem statement?
Sure.
What are we trying to solve for? And you must have clarity as to what you're trying to solve for. And then from there, you engage, for example, in an institution like Absa, which is a large institution, you engage with the various business units to understand where are they at, what are they seeing in terms of the market dynamics, because that's key, that you need to take the outside-in view of the world. What's shifting, for example? Insights are we getting from those shifts? And then how do we take those insights and then convert them into strategic value on the back of that?
Lovely.
So looking at the trends is very important. Case in point, I'll just use a rudimentary example. If I look at what's going on in the world today around the war, the oil, you know that this is going to have an adverse impact over time, or it might have a positive impact over time. So you've got to understand, what does that pattern tell me, which then needs to be factored into my thinking process, so that as I design my strategies, I have that in mind as well. So that's where we start, really, by engaging the various business units, and then also sitting and creating space, like amongst ourselves as executives and some of the business unit leads, and having those conversations around, are we seeing the shifts in the same way? And then from the shifts, well, how do we translate then these shifts into real business value? But the most important thing, which a lot of people underestimate, is how do you create psychological safety within that? Because if there's no psychological safety, people are not going to be themselves and be open in terms of really putting their thoughts on the table and what they're seeing. Because what you want is to almost get as much information as you possibly can. So it really has to start off very wide without attacking personalities.
Or ridiculing some of the...
No, absolutely not. But then you get to a point where you say, now let's start funneling it down and really narrowing it to the choices that we need to be making.
Excellent.
And those choices, as you can hear, are informed by the external environment, because external environment drives customer behavior. And then customer behavior, that's how we create value for shareholders on the back of us implicitly understanding customer behavior and then being able to ultimately deliver value to shareholders.
Beautiful. So now, all of this is captured and we know how we'll deliver value. Now, we've got a document and alignment at exco level. Where does the document travel? The shortest distance to the drawer, or where and how?
I sense, for me, that is the most difficult part, I think, of any strategy. That to a large extent, you find that when it comes to execution,
Yes.
we're not executing the paper that we all agreed upon. You
Yes.
know, and that's why you tend to find that strategies fail. Okay, so I think for me the most important thing is to understand once you shift from, I would say, from designing the strategy to implementation, you must be very clear in your mind that now I'm moving into implementation.
Sure.
And implementation basically ensures that execution doesn't fail. But you must be clear as to what are the things that need to be in place in order for execution not to fail. So, for example, when you look at strategic initiatives, every strategic initiative needs to be somebody that is accountable for.
Sure. Good.
So this thing of having dual accountability,
Yes.
for example, it doesn't work.
Especially for a large corporation like this.
Yes.
Then there's like 4 people also driving the same thing.
Yeah. So for me, I think it's important just to understand that execution fails when accountability is diffused.
Sure.
So you therefore need to make sure you've got a single, owner. You've got measurable milestones that, at this point, this is my checkpoint. I always talk about traction measures.
Okay.
This is my...
So traction measures means?
It's basically indicators, in a bank setting that help you as an individual, to assess whether or not you are moving in the right direction or whether there's a need for course correction. So in that sense, then, strategy execution is not really static when you look at it. So strategy execution really requires continuous monitoring, but most importantly also adjustments and also a disciplined follow through as you work through the execution of your overarching strategy.
To come back and review the progress on those strategic initiatives.
Yes.
Okay.
You remember I spoke earlier on about discipline. So it really comes back to that disciplined review, cycle and integrate it in a robust way. And then also trying to understand what's our risk exposure based on where we are at, and also the capital that we have deployed. Are we still comfortable that it's taking us where we want to go? So for me then, when you think strategy execution, it's really not about momentum, but it's about that disciplined follow through.
Sure.
Because if that disciplined follow through is not there, strategy, I can assure you, it's going to fail.
Sure.
Without a doubt. And then also, it's just about consistency, and that consistency for me, I think ultimately it really outperforms the intensity of any.
So consistency over intensity.
Yeah,
and
consistency, follow through. If I say I'm going to do this, then let me do it. Yes, sometimes life happens. Like there's a lot of volatility at the moment. When that happens, do you still have the discipline to say that's the direction I'm taking, and I'm going to be consistent? Obviously, not blindly consistent. You've got to understand where you've got to course correct, given the signals that you're getting, and use those to inform how do you better shape your direction going forward. But consistency, you can't underestimate it in execution of strategy.
Lovely. And then communication. How is this communicated all the way to my banker?
That's a tough one, I must say. But if frontline teams cannot explain the strategy in the simplest form, you must understand it hasn't been cascaded.
Sure.
That's almost like your litmus test. Are my frontline teams understanding the strategy? And has it been properly translated? So translation, I think, is the toughest part in any strategy cycle, because you don't want to miss or get a huge component of the people lost in the translation. So translation becomes critical. And then also it's multi-layered. And you've got to understand that executive level, strategy is mostly directional. But
good.
once you get to operational level, it has to be about your behavioral expectations.
Sure.
What are those? And then, you must have the right, for example, levers in place. So what are the KPIs that you look at, et cetera, et cetera. So really cascading it through the layers and understand what is required at each layer is what ultimately enables successful, I would say, deployment of an effective strategy.
Lovely. I find the issue starts to come when the KPIs are now having to be set, and no, but not that one. That one is that one's.
Yeah.
I wonder how best can KPIs be harmonized.
Yeah, I think there's three, for me, levers that you always have to think about. The first one is you need to have clear performance metrics or KPIs that are aligned to the strategic pillars themselves. And then also the biggest lever, I can tell you now without a doubt, is incentives.
Yes.
And the alignment of incentives.
Yes,
Because, what gets rewarded, it's what gets done, ultimately. So if there's no alignment there, you've missed the trick. And then I think finally, it's just repetitive communication. Particularly as you go down the layers, you have to make sure that strategy becomes almost like a shared language across the entire organization. And if you get, I think, at least at a basic level, those three elements right, you can deliver any strategy effectively.
Oh, excellent. Love the strategy conversation. We can talk that to the end. I want to get to the sustainability part. I'm just curious what you do there and your views there for how the bank is driving sustainability for the continent.
So historically, your developed economies have contributed disproportionately to the overall global emissions, which is why when you look at transition pathways for developing economies, they must actually be approached in a manner that is thoughtful, but most importantly, it has to be done in a fair way. So if sustainability is not embedded into strategy, the organization is unlikely to remain resilient across multiple generations. So it is important to ensure that sustainability is taken into consideration by any organization as it thinks about how to add value to the clients out there.
Sure. Wow, time is accelerated fast. So just curious, a few more minutes. In South Africa, at least, you got the big 4 or 5, and then you got these new banks that are coming up, accelerating fast. And I wonder how the big banks respond.
Yeah, so what we are really seeing is that new entrants are gaining traction more and more, particularly in specific segments of the market. And this is particularly true, I think, where they are able to leverage simpler operating models and also digital capabilities as we go through now this digital evolution and transformation. So for me, I think when I look at that, it's actually healthy for the industry in particular, because it pushes all of us to innovate and also to continuously improve the customer experience. So as you can see, the customer is the ultimate beneficiary through all of this. And one of the realities, in particular for incumbent institutions, is that while we operate within complex legacy environments and also transforming these systems and also while continuing also to serve customers, it does require a careful sequencing and also in particular disciplined execution, which is something that I've made reference to when we started this conversation.
No, absolutely. And as we close, almost to the close, I wonder what we can expect, exciting things from Absa, either here in South Africa or across the rest of the continent.
At Absa, our focus continues to serving our customers in the right way and also to provide innovative solutions that are making banking more convenient, but also accessibility and also relevant to the needs.
So maybe we conclude by asking these two questions. If you can think of one challenge that you can give to our listeners, just probably one thing maybe that our listeners might want to consider start doing or continue. And the second one is to recommend a book or a site or a resource that we can learn and continue to renew ourselves.
Okay. Yeah, I would say the key thing for me is, for the listeners in particular, build competence before chasing recognition. That for me is critical. So you need to think in systems, I would say, rather than in functions. Because, we tend to fragment ourselves, particularly in these large organizations, by thinking about my function, my strategy function, my finance function. If we think in systems, the overarching systems, how does it come together in support of the customer agenda? And then I would say understand that strategy is a choice.
That's beautiful.
And that execution is a discipline. So once you move into execution, it's all about discipline. Sustainability in all of this lies in alignment between the two. So between strategy as well as the execution of the strategy. And I think the most important for me is that I would say leadership is temporary. Always have to remember that. But stewardship is more generational. If you think about what legacy you want to leave, you've got a choice to make there. So in my mind, ultimately, I think if Africa really strengthens institutional credibility and also develops leaders who can balance growth with discipline, the demographic dividend that we have as a continent becomes a true competitive advantage rather than a risk to the continent. So for me, that is really leadership challenge for our own generation when I look at it. And then in terms of a book, I would say the person that I really follow a lot is Renee Brown. So I really enjoy her and her leadership principles. In particular, she speaks a lot about vulnerability. Vulnerability is actually not a weakness. It's a leadership strength, if you think about it, because it does allow for honest reflection, which is quite critical, especially in senior leadership. It also allows for stronger connection with others, particularly if you want to mobilize colleagues, as an example. You have to have some level of vulnerability. And also, ultimately, it's more effective when it comes to decision making, because none of us have got monopoly of knowledge. So when you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you're able to draw on the diversity of thinking that you have around the table. So therefore, from my side, I also believe that humility is very important because it creates space for that continuous learning, but also, for renewal, because all of us, we have to renew ourselves in order, for us to evolve, which in my mind is essential, particularly in the environments that are consistently and continuously evolving.
Awesome. Punky, thank you so much. Such amazing insights, and you just drop them with ease.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we had Punky right here in the studio. Woo!
Thank you.
Thank you.